Hoping not to have your business fail? Well, watch on. As a business accountant, my team and I spend all day long helping business owners on their journey. And as you can imagine, over the years, unfortunately, we've seen our fair share of business failures. However, not as many as you would think, and probably as the statistics would tell you. Only around half of businesses actually make it to that 5-year point. So it's kind of a magical milestone, that one, if you made it that far. So in this video, I just wanted to talk to you about the key 3 common themes we see around why businesses fail. Ultimately, there's one, and that is that the business runs out of cash, can't pay its bills, and that's the end of that. But I think really there's 3 kind of key themes, and I'm going to touch on those and make you aware of them. And that's the idea of this video, just to give you some awareness. And I think I'll do a follow-up video where I'm going to expand on those a little bit more and talk about some actual actions you can take to avoid them. So let's get into it. But before we do, if you like these type of videos, make sure to click the subscribe button and the bell below to get notified whenever we release more videos just like this one. So as I said, ultimately the business will have run out of money if it's failed. So what are the key 3 kind of indicators and themes that we see around this? And I think the first one would be that businesses don't sell enough at prices high enough. That's the 2 key factors of number 1. And I know it sounds obvious, because I think when you say to most people, like, why would a business go out of money? They're either going to tell you, well, it ran out of money, or it just didn't sell enough. And not selling enough is obviously quite key. People either they don't research the market, and I'm not a big one for researching, if I'm honest, but I don't know, they did no research at all about their pricing model, which tends to be the way. So they're like, we see a lot of this. Someone will leave like a really well-paid job to go and set up like an e-commerce business, or I don't know, sell candles online, whatever the case may be, but then haven't worked out the margins. So, you know, yeah, okay, it looks great. You might think, okay, I know, I'm really confident I could sell 100 grand of, I don't know, X product, vitamins, candles, whatever the case may be. But actually, if you're only making 10% on each of those sales, it's quite a lot of sales more needed to actually take home a salary and keep this business going full time. So that's more the kind of thing that I think we see a lot here as accountants, is just not understanding that model and not putting the time in and not factoring that in when you go to price. So it's pricing as kind of one thing, the price is too low, or we haven't appreciated the quantity we've got to sell is more the other thing. So it tends to be a combination of the 2, not selling enough and not selling it at prices high enough. And there could be things going on in there as well, like they haven't built brands, they haven't done enough marketing activity, enough sales activity, particularly if you're kind of in the service-based industry. I think a lot of people really kind of don't spend enough time looking at what we need to do to actually have an ongoing stream of sales. They might have a success for a small period, then that contract or project runs out, and then they're kind of looking around like, where's the next bit coming from? And we haven't got that ongoing sales process. So though that as a number 1 reason, I would say is the most key, and I suppose the most obvious one, you just didn't sell enough. But particularly for me and for us as business accountants, it's going to be that pricing. You didn't sell it for the right price to sustain what you want, and there's lots of things that go into that. It's almost probably a series of videos on its own, but pricing and quantity being the number 1 reason. The second one's an odd one, because it normally happens after an initial period of success. So the business might have survived those initial couple of years, and then suddenly it fails. And it fails because the owner carries on taking too much money normally. So taking too much money would be our second reason, and that's a weird one, isn't it? But it tends to happen when you get a bit of confidence as an owner. You're like, okay, this is doing well. Maybe you've started to take your first employee or a team of employees. They may have even, quite often the theme is they would have taken a slight step back, maybe stopped putting in as much activity as they were, certainly as many hours as they were. And then what tends to happen then is your profits start to disintegrate somewhere along the lines, and they don't adjust. And actually, when we talk about the third reason, these 2 are quite linked, but it's just this awareness then of, well, is this money, can I actually take this money or not? And the owner doesn't have it. So they carry on because they've got used to that lifestyle. They've got bills to pay, they've got mortgages to pay, kids to pay for, whatever the case may be. And the cash is in the bank, and they'll keep taking it, but then they'll forget, oh, okay, there's future tax liabilities here that might come up, or there's other things I've got to pay for. And because the cash doesn't just, some businesses, when they're really, really small, obviously the cash would just disappear if you carried on taking it. But even some of the smallest businesses, you could be taking future money that you've got to pay in tax somewhere. And if you're not aware of that, that's like where people get really in trouble. We find that they're getting this circular nature of taking money out and then always owing somebody else. And actually the problem lied with you took too much in the first place. So it's looking at that, and we see a lot of business fails in that sense. They just build up so much tax liability normally, or I don't know, they can't pay their suppliers. They've carried on taking their money, but there's no money to pay the suppliers that they're on credit with or something like that, and then everything tumbles. So taking too much money would be the second reason. So just to add to that reason, actually, if you're in a startup phase, it can still apply to you, because you might have had some funding and then you've just carried on taking what you need to pay your mortgage all along, and then suddenly you haven't got any money and it's all falling down around you. So again, it comes back to that awareness of, can I actually afford to take it? And that's where we end up in number 3, which is basically making bad business decisions because of a lack of clarity and a lack of awareness. And it's a theme that if you've listened to much of the content that I put out, or read or watched, or whatever the case may be, you will know I talk about this whole idea of awareness and getting a real clarity around your business. And a lot of that, of course, shock horror as an accountant, is based on the awareness of your numbers and your figures, but it's looking at that, and a lot of people just don't. So what tends to happen is, taking too much money is normally you just don't have the profits to take that money, even though there might be cash available. And again, you might be thinking, that doesn't make any sense. If we're making profit, there must be cash. But take it from me and maybe some other videos that I've done, but those two are not, they are linked, but they're not one and the same. It's very possible to be making money and have making profit and have no money. It's also very possible, for a while anyway, to make no money and have cash. So that all comes together in something called the balance sheet. So we've done other videos on the balance sheet, but a lot of time owners won't look at that. They won't have any kind of handle on what's my future tax bills looking like. What's the overall position of the business? Am I making any profit? All they're doing is living day to day in that bank account and thinking, I can pay my bills, I can pay it. And before you know it, you suddenly get a surprise, what seems like a surprise tax bill from your accountant or from the VAT office or whoever the case may be. So that would be the main one. Reason 3 is ultimately people just didn't plan and they made poor decisions. Maybe they went and bought that new van, or they invested in that new marketing activity, or they took on that employee they couldn't really afford. And again, it's not immediate, because cash flow's coming in. Most of the time this happens when you've started with a little bit of success and you're kind of growing, and then before you know it, it's out. Something's died somewhere along the lines in that whole model and that process, and then your business fails as well. And those are the 3 key reasons. Obviously there's more than this, but I think if you did a survey of accountants, and particularly our team, and what we've experienced, and we do a lot in the startup and early stage and growth businesses, you'd have seen those themes all the time repeated. And as I said, I'm going to do a video talking about what you can do about them. I'm sure this video, as you've been listening, thinking, I can do this and do that, you might generate some of your own ideas, but I will expand on that in a future video. So please do share this with anybody you think needs to know, and hopefully they can avoid these problems, and we'll see you in the next one.